Agenda today, I talk fast. Welcome to Friends of the Museum. I'm Don Kuntz. I'm your vice president. You people actually voted for me, okay? Jack Geiger, he's out of the country. He won't be back. He'll be back for the next meeting. He's actually in Kansas City playing his ukulele or violin or one of those things that he does, okay? So hopefully we'll have a little fun here today, and we've got an excellent speaker, and there's a couple things we need to talk about. If you notice the food in the back, you might be able to even smell it already. We need to acknowledge our hostesses, and before I tell you who these two people are, most of you probably will know, we need to talk about these two people. These two people just seem to be volunteers in anything and everything that goes on in this town. You know, if you need some help, you call Lucille Stamen or Leon Sager. These people are just the workhorses in town, and they actually need help. So there are other people, other people in our audience should volunteer, and we're going to be talking about the Main Street program today, too, and we have the Main Street City Downtown Manager, and we're going to talk a little bit about what Main Street is. Some of you do know what it is, some of you don't. That's a lot of volunteers, so the name of the game, I guess, is volunteer, volunteer, volunteer. Okay? Anyhow, today our hostess are Leon Sager and Lucille Stamen. Okay? And the people who are catering the event is the Hilltop Restaurant. We need to get to the guests. I move pretty quick, and I've kind of got an agenda here, and if I miss something or miss someone, just jump up and say, hey, wait a minute, okay? We need to acknowledge if there are any new members or if there are any guests, and we'll start over at this table over here. And how about the second table back here?
We have a new member, Rhea Donaldson. Rhea lives on Main Street here in Colinsville. I know you've seen her information about her on the paper. She's on the board, the same board that Don sits on, the Downtown Development Commission, and we expect great things out of Rhea, and she's a wonderful person. Glad to have her on.
Good, thank you. And George, is there any new people, any guests? Out
of mine.
Okay, and the table right behind you? And how about the table way in the back? Way in the back? Anybody back there? And this table here? And how about Mr. and Miss Paul at your table? And this table over here on the end? Okay, so we pretty well know everyone here. We need to figure out some sort of buffet procedure, how we're going to get in line or whatever. Got an idea with how you want to do it? Is there a number on the table? How did we do that, Lucille? Okay, well then why don't we just start with Lucille's table and let them go first, because the two people on the hostess. Okay, just kind of work yourself around and get in line or whatever. Okay. Okay, and we need to do a prayer, invocation. Linda Altenberger.
Father, we're thankful for another beautiful day that you have been so generous to give to us. We ask you now to bless this food and bless each home that's represented here. Bless the ones that prepare this food. We need you to pray.
Okay, one of the great things about this organization is they have great food. I just can't wait till a couple months from now and come back and eat like this again. So I guess the head table will go first, and then we'll start back there with Lucille's table. Okay? Do that. Okay? So why don't we get up and do that? Start it off. Thank you. Well, how was the food? Good. Irving liked it too. Okay, for our...
I want to say something.
Lucille. Oh, okay. Ina. Let's get Ina right now before I forget it. She has, if you want a list of the membership, she has some copies. And just go to her, and she has a list. And if we need more, we'll make you some more, okay? For the callers, we have a list. And we have 2 sizes of print. How about that? The wonders of the computer and the printer. Okay, let's get to our speaker. This woman is actually, most of us know who she is, Lois Metzger. She's going to talk a little bit about women, property, deeds. Maybe some of that falls under historic preservation. Okay? Would you welcome Lois Metzger? Need some help, I'll hold that.
Okay. I didn't bring an easel, so Don has volunteered. We won't need this for a little bit, but I will refer to it every once in a while. First of all, I want to apologize to all of you. I know you were expecting Ken Buell and I thought we'd save that program for next year if you want us again, since we gave it the last time that we were invited. And some of you have since been to some of our historic awards ceremonies and have seen the program. If you haven't and you need a program for some of your other organizations, we have a program that's available. This today is just a little bit different. First of all, I probably wouldn't be here today if I hadn't taken an afternoon nap about 6 years ago and was awakened by a telephone call from a friend asking me to serve on a committee for the Chamber of Commerce. Well, it turned out I was the chairman of the committee, and that was 6 years and 5 historic landmark programs ago. But it's been fun, and we've met so many neat people and have learned so much about our council history. Recently, women celebrated the 75th anniversary of the adoption of the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. However, long before 1920 and long before the suffrage movement began, women were making their mark in Colinsville. Women have always played an important part. I've discovered some interesting facts that I'd like to share with you today. First of all, Don, we need the township map. All right, pretend this is Colinsville Township. Colinsville Township was sectioned in 1810. However, there were many claims made before that. A township is 6 miles square, divided into 36 sections of 640 acres each. And the numbering begins in the upper right-hand corner with number 1 and goes from right to left, then left to right, right to left, and so forth, down all the way down till you get to section 36. I've marked a little bit on here where some different landmarks are that we'll be talking about today. And for those of you in the back, you'll have to come up after the meeting and look at it more carefully because I didn't mark them all in black. Colinsville that we're going to be talking about is down in section 33 and 34. Many of us live in the west end of town, and this is the Casterline claim over here. And then I have the belt line drawn, Vandalia Street, and the railroad tracks down here. So I'll refer to some of this as I go on today. When the government land grant office opened in Edwardsville, the first person in line to register for a piece of property in Colinsville Township was a woman, Lydia Moore, and her piece of property was the northeast quarter of section 20. That's out here, it's in the Ben Whitty property, now down off of 157. Probably the woman that had the greatest influence of all on Colinsville was Elizabeth Wilt Herzog Collins, the widow of William Burridge Collins. She's the E.W. Collins that we see mentioned so often in our early history. Elizabeth Wilt Herzog came to Colinsville Township from Philadelphia in 1820. This was just 2 years after statehood. Her father had purchased the old claim of Isaac West on Cahokia Creek, where William Rabb had operated a 4-story mill. Herzog added a distillery to this, and this was down, as we think of off of State Aid 35, down past Forney Farm in that area. There's no longer Canteen Creek running through there, and it's hard to believe that there was ever a mill there. And that is in section 19, and that's where Elizabeth Wilt was living before she married, Elizabeth Wilt Herzog, I should say, before she married William Burridge Collins on February 26, 1826. Elizabeth and William had 5 children. He died in 1835 at age 33, and after his death, Elizabeth was left to manage his estate. And Elizabeth Collins, along with the Reverend Dr. Joseph L. Darrow and Horace Look, Irving's great-grandfather, platted our downtown area, Colinsville original town, in 1837. The original town was made up of 8 streets and 2 alleys. Aurora, Vandalia, which is now Morrison in the original part of town, Center Street, Clinton, Seminary, Main, and Church Street. And then they even named the alleys, Wood and Grove. And this is in section 33 and 34 of the township. Shortly after this was platted, an addition was made to Colinsville that bears Mrs. Collins' name. William Collins wrote of his mother. She had a rare business ability and managed the estate left to her charge with sound judgment. She had an intuitive perception of character. She was a quiet, modest woman. Her religious life combined the Puritan elements of the New England family into which she married with the German ideas and spirit that she had inherited. The harder elements of Puritanism melted and became transformed in the warmer currents of her sympathies and more liberal thought. She was also very interested in schools, and she wrote to Massachusetts to have a man come to teach and guaranteed his salary if there weren't enough public people to patronize the school. The Collins family operated several businesses in Collinsville, including a distillery. But the temperance movement caused them to tear down the distillery after the family became convinced that it was hypocritical to preach against strong drink on Sunday and sell whiskey on Monday. In 1838, a pact to promote temperance was signed by landowners. Among these signing the pact, and this pact is registered in Edwardsville, was Elizabeth Collins, Dr. Darrow, and F.J. Guernsey. This F.J. Guernsey is platted an addition that bears that name. But did you know that F.J. Guernsey and F.J. Harlow are the same person? There's also a Harlow edition. And that person is a female. Frances Jeanette Guernsey was the daughter of an early Collinsville doctor, Dr. Sylvanus Guernsey. She platted the Guernsey edition in 1849 and the Harlow edition in 1857. The Guernsey edition is the 400 block of West Main Street across the street from the library. And in it includes Guernsey Street, Wood Alley, and Doubtful Street. Doubtful. So doubtful that it never came about. If you notice the way the numbers are in that block, there is a spot where the 300 and 400 block breaks. And I guess Doubtful Street should have been in there. The Harlow edition, which includes the Bloom House, adjoins the Guernsey edition. And in 1872, when Mr. Hackleroad purchased his property for his home, which is the site of Old Peking Restaurant and Lou Stamen's home, he bought the property from Frances Harlow. So she was active in business for about 25 years at least. When Frances Guernsey married William Harlow, her uncle, Dr. Darrow, performed the ceremony. Her mother, Sarah, became the second wife of Horace Look. The original plat of the Darrow edition shows Guernsey property on Seminary Street, and it appears that this includes the site of the Episcopal Church. Angeline Penny Beidler was born in Colinsville Township in 1835. She was one of 10 children. Her father owned the southwest quarter of Section 22. This area is east of Keebler Street and includes Meadow Heights and the shopping center on the Beltline. She attended the Colinsville Academy and at age 16 went to Cape Girardeau, Missouri to teach school. It was there that she met Frederick Beidler. After they were married, they lived for a while in Michigan, and it was there that he joined the Michigan militia in the Civil War. In 1861, Mrs. Beidler was teaching in Colinsville while her husband served in the Civil War. Frederick had been poisoned with some poison had been added to some flour, and he had eaten something that was poisoned. And Mrs. Beidler went to Washington in hopes of seeing President Lincoln to seek the release of her ill husband. And this she accomplished. For many years, Mrs. Beidler was active in the Women's Christian Temperance Association. And when she heard of a husband that had spent his paycheck in a local saloon, and the family was in need, this lady, who was always dressed in black, took her umbrella under her arm and paid a call to the bar with demands for food and coal for the family. We all are familiar with the fact that she operated the Beidler Hotel on Church Street. But did you know that she ran for the school board in the 1890s, over 25 years before the women could vote? She didn't win, but she did receive 38 votes, more than one of her opponents. She also was the first woman to serve on the church board of the First Presbyterian Church. Our research this year uncovered another interesting, affluent woman. She might never have lived in Colinsville, but she was a property owner. And in 1953, her great-granddaughter, Julia Terry, was the veiled prophet queen in St. Louis. Now I'll take you back 90 years before that. In 1866, just after the Civil War, Elizabeth Helen Todd was single and living in St. Louis when she purchased the property on Morrison Avenue in the J.J. Berkey edition. And this house, we honored this last summer, and we, in our recognition, referred to it as the Bischoff Maschek House. Mascheks lived there for over 40 years in the 1900s, but long before that, this property belonged to Elizabeth Helen Todd. She was the daughter of Albert Todd, a St. Louis lawyer. The family home, which must have been quite large, in the St. Louis directory, it gave the address as between Park and Lafayette, Compton and Jefferson. And this is a large tract of land to the west of Lafayette Square. And after she married her husband in 1868, they lived on Todd Avenue near her parents. And I would love to take a ride around St. Louis to see what's there, and I'm sure their house isn't there because this area, of course, has many, many homes there now, but after the Civil War, theirs evidently was the only one. Mr. Terry, John Terry, that she married, was a lawyer, and he had served as a captain in the Civil War. He later became involved in real estate in St. Louis. He had one son that joined him in the business, and another son was on the faculty at Washington University in the medical school. The son that was in the real estate business became a member of the board of directors of Boatman's Bank and several other boards in St. Louis. They raised 4 sons, and this summer we discovered a copy of her will and found it most interesting. It was written in 1887, and she died in 1888. The first item in the will left the property on Morrison Avenue to her dear aunt, Helen Bassett, and to Helen's 3 daughters. It was interesting that it said that she was leaving them the property, but they were only to use it during their lifetime. After that, it was to be left to a children's hospital in St. Louis. And this, I don't know if this is the same children's hospital as we think of today, because this was a homeopathic hospital that was located at 18th and Adams Street in St. Louis. And so I don't know if it's the same hospital or not. But anyway, it was interesting to note that she left this to Helen and Helen's 3 daughters. But Helen had 5 children. She also had 2 sons, and the 2 sons weren't listed at all. And also they were to receive $50 a month. The will went on, and that she instructed that the property should be insured and well maintained, and if it were destroyed, it should be rebuilt so that they would still have a home. Some of the other remembrances that she left in her will were rather interesting. She left to her 1 son, Albert Todd, a diamond solitaire earrings and a watch and chain that had belonged to her father. She left to Robert James another pair of earrings and a large picture of Niagara Falls. She left to her son, let's see, I missed one. John Wilson, a diamond pin and her watch and chain, and she left to Howard Leslie a diamond ring, a Swiss table and chairs, a Swiss clock, and I wonder if it was a cuckoo clock, and something else. And then she left them $100 a month when each became of age. The remainder of her estate was to go to her husband to manage in the best interest of himself and their sons. If her husband was to survive their sons, and there were no grandchildren, then her cousin, Albert Todd DeBaum of Colinsville, was to receive $1,500. Now that was only if. So it didn't make, she was quite interesting. The remainder was to be divided then between several St. Louis institutions. And I want to point out that Mrs. Bassett, who she referred to as her dear Aunt Helen, was the widow of Ludlam Bassett, a partner in the Bassett Lawrence addition to Colinsville. And this is just west of the Berkey addition. It includes streets, west of Morrison Avenue and a little bit north of Johnson Street, perhaps, in the rolling hills out in that area. And one of the streets in that addition was Kansas Street, but Kansas Street never came to be, or else it was, another street was continued on and the name was changed. But Elizabeth Todd Terry evidently did what she wanted to do with her independent wealth. And I have saved Collinsville's most interesting and colorful woman to last. And Dan, this is especially for you. This lady lived in the house that Dan Hayden lives in. Grace Augusta Logan Wilson was 18 years old in 1880. She was the wife of 37-year-old Major Oscar Blackwood Wilson. They had recently purchased the beautiful French Empire home in the Reed addition that had been built by George Miller. They had a year-old daughter, Enola Augusta, and later would have another daughter, Lucille Logan Wilson. In 1876, Wilson had purchased a stock bale factory from I.C. Moore, and I.C. Moore was the last village board president before we went to the mayoral form of government, and he also, I believe, donated the first fire truck to the city of Collinsville. Things evidently went well with the marriage for several years. But then suddenly in 1896, Grace petitioned the court to commit her husband to a mental institution. The commission appointed by the court included Dr. Wadsworth, and they found Oscar insane. And he was committed to the mental hospital at Anna, Illinois, early in 1897. He was released in the custody of Grace, but died soon after. And it was about this time that Grace became very active in business matters. Between July 1897 and June 1899, Grace was involved in many land transactions. She purchased the coal rights on 25 pieces of property and the right-of-way to 27 pieces of property. It was her plan to construct a railroad between Venice, Illinois, and Colinsville, and a depot was to be built near where a coal shaft was to be sunk. And this evidently was on Vandalia Street as you make the curve by Debbie's Market and go out towards the old high school. There was the railroad depot was to be out in that area. This was to be built within an 18-month period, but evidently it never took place. About this time, several other events, however, took place. Grace remarried and became Mrs. James R. Henry, and her daughter Enola married Dr. John Morgan Sims. Grace sells them her home on Reed Avenue, or Aurora, South Aurora, whichever you want. When Dr. Sims lived there, the front of the house faced Reed Avenue. Originally, it was to face Aurora Street. Soon after, Grace married for the third time. She married Samuel H. Lathy, who was almost 80 years old. He was 37 years older than she was. They lived in his home at 1413 Locust Street in St. Louis, and this would be behind the St. Louis Public Library, perhaps where the little park is now along Locust Street. He had offices in the security building in St. Louis. Samuel Lathy was an interesting man. He was born in Massachusetts in 1825, and at age 21 made a tour of the civilized world as a sailor before the mast. In 1849, the time of the California Gold Rush, he went to California and established a freight line from Sacramento to Nevada City. He came to St. Louis in 1856 and established a picture frame and mirror business. And in one of the city directories, instead of saying mirror, it called it a looking glass. In 1880, he got involved in railroading and developed the railroad between St. Louis, Belleville, and the St. Louis, Belleville, and Southern Railway, and in connection operated extensively in coal mining and bought lead mines and operated them until 1902. So perhaps this is how he met Grace. They were both rather involved in the same thing. Samuel Lathy died in 1906, or early in 1907, so they were only married a very short time. And shortly after his death, Grace moved from their home on Locust Street to the beautiful Southern Hotel downtown. It occupied the block bounded by Broadway, 4th, Walnut, and Elm. In 1909, Dr. Sims divorced Enola Wilson. He kept the house in Colinsville, and she remarried, becoming Mrs. Albert Ayers of Reno, Nevada. In 1911, there were several articles about Grace in the Colinsville Advertiser. The first, on October 14th, tells about Grace's wealth. It says, and her representative is quoted as saying, and he is William Irvine Edwards, and he has come to St. Louis from New York to manage the estate. And he says that her real estate holdings are worth between $4 and $5 million. But it said when Sam Lathy died, he left 14 lawsuits outstanding, and she settled all of them, paying $1.5 million to settle them, and one case alone took $225 to settle. Her properties included the Lathy Building at 7th and Chestnut, also properties on 19th and Washington, which was to be leased as what they called a monster hotel, and other pieces of property on Washington Avenue, Locust Street, and 14th and Poplar. She is said to be, which the one at 14th and Poplar was to be worth over $1 million itself. Grace made the news again shortly before Christmas, when she had William Steinmeier arrested for loitering outside her apartments at the Planters Hotel. Now, she had moved to the Planters from the Southern Hotel. Steinmeier was in hopes of seeing her daughter Lucille. Steinmeier was a lumber dealer from Colinsville, whose lumber yard on Main Street had burned just a month earlier. And his lumber yard was right out here where the parking lot is, next to the library. It stood next to what was then Schreppel's funeral home, and caused quite a lot of damage to the funeral home when it burned. It seems that Steinmeier had worked for Major Wilson at one time, and he was carrying a picture of Lucille Wilson in the pocket next to his heart. At the time of the incident, he was 54 years old, and Lucille, the daughter of Grace, was 30. And I want to read some of the things that were in the advertiser. This is on microfilm in the genealogy room, and you couldn't write things today the way they did in those days, and maybe that's just as good. It said, this society pillar, and it's referring to Grace, did not always appear in print as the richest woman in St. Louis. Well, hardly. And Steinmeier was going to appeal the verdict in the police court, and if he stays with the game, the prosecution will be called off and told to drop the case when the scent gets too hot for them. The advertiser is not in the sensation hunting class, but nevertheless, it is not willing to see the inoffensive fellow like Steinmeier handed a package without protest against the injustice of the deal. His friend Peggy may not desire his attentions anymore, but there was a time when she was mighty willing to have William come down and play in her yard. So they wrote interesting articles. And there are a number of the advertisers available there, and there are some old ones that they keep down in the lower sub-basement too, but they're very fragile. But Grace, I guess, was unscathed by this incident. She later moved to a large home at 4200 Westminster in St. Louis, and by 1921, the Lathy building had its name changed to the Calumet building, and it has since been torn down. And it's either where Keener Plaza stands now or where Mike Shannon's restaurant is. And it was either catty-corner from the Wainwright building or across the street from it. But without being able to check the numbers in Keener Plaza, I wasn't able to really find out for sure which side of the block it was on. But by 1921, Grace was no longer listed in the St. Louis City Directory. So if she had passed away by then or had moved elsewhere, I don't know. But that was all that I was able to find out about Grace. But she had a very colorful life and added some color to our city. And I have some papers up here that some of you might like to look at. Perhaps some of your ancestors had sold some coal rights or some railroad rights to Grace during that time. And then I have pictures of Colinsville Township as it was this is the top one, this corner here, is from a Maps and Atlas book of Madison County that's in the genealogy room, and it's dated 1872. The one next to it is a more current one. Down here is a map of Colinsville from 1872. Then there are pictures of the Southern Hotel, the Planters Hotel, the Security Building, and then the Wainwright Building, which was near the Lathy building, and then a description of the hotels underneath. And if you would like to see pictures of the historic landmarks that I mentioned today, they're on display still upstairs in the library in the display case on the first floor. They'll be there just for a short time longer. And we'd like you all to come to our award ceremony next summer. Thank you.
You know, I could come here once a week and listen to all this. Isn't this great? Let's move on to announcements. Mr. and Mrs. Wrigley are out of town for a few weeks, and they were working on... And Floyd, was you in on the historic project and the taping? Was you in on that? Anyhow, there is a...
Irving might help a little bit.
Okay. There's going to be, when they was taping this oral history on World War II, what happens that there's going to be a symposium and a dinner. And there's some information on it that you can come up here and look at it here up on at the table. Let's talk about downtown for a few minutes. Last night at City Hall, the town was introduced to the new downtown manager, the first downtown manager. And what this is all about, it's about Main Street program, it's about certified local government, it's about trying to help your downtown and get it going again, is what it's all about. And just give you an idea of what it means is, and I think that this group is really going to play a big part in rejuvenating downtown, because there's a lot of buildings downtown, and remember when I first started talking here about people volunteer. Well, sooner or later, all of you people are going to be involved in volunteering something, or your time or something, to help this project work. And it just so happens, and I was just kind of elated, delighted, whatever you want to call it, about the person who became the downtown manager. And I am on this Downtown Development Commission, which has actually been in existence for about 4 years, or maybe a little more than 4 years. And they went from, I think, 14 or 15 people down to 7 or 8 right now. And they went from 67 applications down to actually 4. And then out of those 4, they brought it to the board, and we decided to vote on who that person was going to be. Well, that person just happens to be one of our own, and that person is in the room right now, and that person happens to be our first downtown manager, Judy DeMoisy. Now, I don't have to tell you what kind of enthusiasm that this woman has. Now, I know some of you, the older people here, they get up at 5 in the morning, and they go to bed at 7 o'clock at night. Well, this woman, I think she gets up about 4 in the morning, and she goes to bed about 4 the next morning. I don't know. She has a lot of enthusiasm, and she really has her hands full. And it's not only, Main Street downtown is not only about tearing the stucco and the chicken wire off and redoing buildings. It's also about trying to get people to come back downtown, to shop back downtown. We kind of find that it's people want it one of 2 ways now. Let me tell you where a Main Street program is. Any town that you go into where you're shopping, or it's a cutesy town, or it's a neat town to go to have lunch or whatever, you drive in and you stop your car and you get in and you walk downtown, and it feels like there are things happening. It's just a fun place to be. If you inquire with the clerks or the owners of those buildings or properties, you're going to find out that they have a Main Street program in place. That's what a Main Street program is all about. And the city has been involved in this thing from day one, and I'm happy about that. Judy will be talking to groups, and she'll eventually come to this group And if there's anything that you want to volunteer your time to be on committees, and there's going to be a lot of committees, and you don't have anything to do and you're getting bored at home and the soap operas really aren't turning you on anymore, call up Judy DeMoisy, because she's going to put you to work. Okay? Now let's talk about two more things that are going to go on. This weekend we're going to have our annual Italian Fest. That'll be on Friday and Saturday. And we expect over 100,000 people in 2 days. And so you should all come down, and they say if you're not Italian, you will be those 2 days that you do show up, and they'll have all the great food, and the streets will be closed off, and we'll have a great parade on Saturday. Understand we have 100 entries in the parade, and I think that thing goes on for about 2 hours. Okay? Now, does everyone have a ticket? Okay, we're going to do a drawing for something to do with the Italian Fest right now. Whoever's name we draw for this is the official Italian poster for this year. Isn't this neat? Okay, and so you can take this home with you, okay? Now don't fight when I call your number. 008790. 008790. That's our friend from the Colinsville Herb Society. Another volunteer, Judy. She was out there working, cleaning up the garden for our Italian Fest. Okay. Do we put that back in? Okay. Okay, now let's talk about another thing that's going to be going on at the end of the month. Heritage America, Cahokia Mounds, down below the hill. Eventually, I would like to see, personally myself, and we have one of our politicians here, I'd like to see that piece of property be brought into the city of Colinsville, Illinois. I really would. It's a World Heritage thing. We've been to Mesa Verde. We've been to different things all over the country. And this is something wonderful, and it's in our own backyard, along with our ketchup bottle. So that's going to be going on September 29th and 30 and October the 1st. And if you've never been down to see something like this, they bring in the real live Indians and they do their Indian dances. First, I'll tell you a quick story, 30 seconds. First time I went down there, they always bring in the same Indian chief. Well, we're all gathered around where the drive-in theater used to be, and they have a big circle dance that they do. And the Indian chief is supposed to ride in on this horse. And this guy's in the back. He's about 300 yards behind us, and he's trying to get on this horse. They brought this horse for the racetrack. Okay? And as fast as he got on that horse would just flip him right off. And at that day, I didn't have a camera with me, but it was really funny to see it. Okay, so also the Cahokia Mounds group, they put together a poster. So get your tickets out, and we're going to have another drawing. And you see these in the businesses on Main Street. What you might want to do if you want one of these is go into one of the businesses, ask them if you can have the poster, or go down to Cahokia Mounds, see if they've got any left. I had a couple. I don't know if we still got any left or not, okay? And by the way, me and my wife, we donate these things every month. I'll put a little plug in for our business. Okay, the number is 008824. Well, look at that right there. 824. Very good. But if you get a chance, everyone goes to the Italian Fest. It's great. It's fun. Come down. See some of your friends. Socialize. That's what it's all about. see what new businesses are. There are several new businesses downtown. There are a couple more coming. We're going to try to get a big restaurant in downtown, maybe 2 big restaurants downtown that will stay open in the evening. Maybe some of the businesses will stay open downtown. This is all part of a Main Street program. Okay, we need to move on. Reading of the minutes by our secretary, Mary Childress.
July the 10th, 1995. The dinner meeting of the Friends of the Colinsville Historical Museum was called to order by President Jack Geiger. In the absence of Chaplain Linda Altenberger, Mr. Irving Dilliard gave the invocation and pledge to the flag was given. The dinner was catered by the Sandwich Shop and the tables decorated in a very patriotic manner. Hostesses were Alma Brankeline and Lola Wrigley. The attendance prize won by Arvel Wrigley and donated by Don and Patty Kuntz of the ABC Framing was a framed picture of Cahokia Mounds. Guest speakers were Jack and Jean Butterfield, local business persons and owners of Butterfield Jewelers. Mr. Butterfield gave an interesting history on the store. Mrs. Butterfield spoke on jewelry stones and having our rings checked by the jeweler to make sure they are secure. She also said costume jewelry is becoming valuable. Minutes of the May meeting were read by Secretary Mary Childress and approved as read. Treasurer Patty Kuntz reported balance on hand May the 9th, 1995, $4,234.42. Balance on hand July the 10th, 1995, $3,029.61. CD balance as of June the 30th, 1995, $1,746.65. Since Judy DeMoisy was not present, Betty Wrigley gave the report on the ketchup bottle. She informed us that Collinsville Progress gave the June award to the ketchup bottle. Recently, the ketchup bottle was her one in 2 publications, the Grit magazine and the Country magazine. The bottle has been completely painted and paid for. Everyone was thanked for their support and all agreed it looks great. T-shirts, caps, and postcards are still available. Under old business, the president announced that the military quilt had been encapsulated. Under new business, Mr. Geiger said Betty and Arvel Wrigley have agreed to serve on the nominating committee. He urged people to take an office, saying it was a privilege. Curator Arvel Wrigley asked us to note the posters alongside the quilt of the military awards and achievements. ABC Framing did the job. Arvel also said we have 15 or 16 Collinsville history books left. The museum gets a small amount of money with each sale. Arvel announced Founders Day is coming up in November and we would like to purchase 3 display cases. 2 cases would enclose the toys and the other would house Mayor Becker's uniform. At present, the cases are so jammed. He said 3 excellent cases have been found at a cost of $1,217. The Irving Dilliard family donated $1,000 in honor of Irving's 90th birthday. The cases would be purchased as a memorial to Dorothy Dillard. So Arvel explained we need to come up with $217. Bud Bazira made the motion to buy the cases and was seconded by Irving, and the motion carried. On World War II, there were 1,000 interviews. It was a worthwhile project. The president asked us to visit the museum, and with no further business, the meeting was adjourned at 8:30 p.m. Respectfully submitted, Mary Childress, Recording Secretary.
Okay, are there any additions, corrections? And if there aren't any appearing, for the secretary, this report would be entered into the record for audit. Okay? Now the treasurer's report from my lovely wife.
Balance on hand as of July 10th, 1995, $3,029.61. Receipts, meals, $346.50. Dues, there was 4 for $20. Memorials, we received $200 in memory of Dorothy Dillard, $1,000 in memory of Elsie West, $25 for Terry Moore, $640 for Margaret Lindner, for a total of memorials $1,865. We received $20 donation from Rick and Sue Bickle. The donation box, we received $17.15. We sold 2 books for $48, and the interest on the checking account for July was $3.52. Total receipts, $2,320.17, bringing the total to $5,349.78. Our disbursements to ABC Framing and More, $69.19. The Sandwich Shop, $335. Warehouse of Fixtures, $1,217. Metro Glass, $30. Total disbursements, $1,651.19. Our balance on hand as of September 12th is $3,698.59. Our CD balance as of August 31st is $1,753.24.
Now, are there any additions or corrections to what she has said? And if there are none appearing, the treasurer's report will be entered into the record for audit. Do we have any correspondence or bills? Do we have any committee reports? There's going to be more committee. Oh, we do have a committee. Yes, ma'am. Please stand up.
Still need a second Wednesday of the month for a sit-up music. Joanne Joker was doing it, and of course, I think most of you know she's still able to do it. So I need the second Wednesday afternoon.
Irving?
One of the many names that Lois mentioned was James Morgan Sims, wasn't it? You all know, I'm sure, that that's the house down on South Aurora Street that Dan Hayden and his wife Sheila have restored, renovated, fixed up so it's beautiful from front and back as well, Reed Avenue as well as Aurora Street. I want him, before I show something though, I want him to tell you all what is happening to that house and why it's happening and what's happening to the Dr. Shrubble house where the Lavender Rose is. So, Dan, please stand up and tell them what you told me.
I'm not sure how many of you know it by now or not, but we put our house on the market. We had 2 people come through to look at it. The first person that looked at it bought the house. The reason that we put it up for sale is because we have moved into a partnership with the people that had the flower basket in Doc Brown's house, and we're half owners of Doc Brown's house now, and 2 old houses is just too much to keep up with. So we sold our house. We're going to be moving into the 2nd floor of Doc Brown's house. The partnership, the flower basket partnership, has dissolved. There's only one person there now, and Sheila has taken over part of that business, the giftware business. She's not getting involved in the flowers or the silk work, but the giftware is Sheila's, and we're real pleased to move in there. We think that it's a great old house, and we're looking forward to living on Main Street. I'm really glad to hear some of the things that Don was talking about with the downtown redevelopment, except we're going to have to give this restaurant thing some more thought. We may not need too many more restaurants. No. Yeah.
Dan, you have the 2 frames with you?
Yes. Since we are selling the house, we have we had some things that Don framed for us, I think.
Right.
Some things that were found in the house by some of the previous owners and finally turned over to us. There's a report card here for little Johnny Miller from 1875 from the Colinsville Public School. I don't know what grade he was in, but his card looks like it was yellow, and a yellow card says it's a medium grade, 70 to 80. If he did real good, it would have been a blue card, and if it would have been green, that was 4. There's some other interesting little things on here you might like to come up and look at. Here's a postcard that was found in the house. It says, missing, Philadelphia, November 9th, 1876. Patrick Faulkner of Weak Mind left his home in this city on July 11th, 1876. He's 23 years of age, 5 feet 10 inches height, slim built, light complexion, brown hair, sandy mustache, thin features, third finger of right hand crooked from having been broken, an India ink cross on his left hand between the thumb and forefinger. Anyway, any information leading to his whereabouts will be liberally rewarded by Taggart, Carlin, and Lukens, Pennsylvania Detective Bureau. So, and just some little things like that were found in the house. I don't know why they kept some of those things, but there's some old bills here from when George Miller, when he was building the house, although this looks like more there's potatoes and things on there. I don't think he used too many potatoes in the construction. Never know. But we'd like to let the museum have those. If the house has been sold to a lady from Granite City. I don't know the lady. I hope she's as interested in preserving the house as I am, and maybe the museum would see fit to let her hang these back in her house if she comes and asks for them or wants to do that. But I didn't want to see them stuck in a closet somewhere and go to waste. So, thank you.
The other thing I want to do, thank you very much, Dan, for that. That was a major addition to the meeting. I was up in Springfield on Sunday to take part in a symposium of World War II veterans. And I took along some things that related to the war period, and some of them were copies of a publication called The Stars and Stripes. Some of you know about it. I'm going to hold up one or two of them and let's just see what sort of how historic some of those papers can be. How many can read that? Hitler dead, and there he is. There's a picture of him. And other papers were important the same way. Here's one that May the 8th. It's a European edition of the New York Herald Tribune. And the war is over now, you see, in Europe. And of course, it had to get straightened out in Japan a little later. And one of the things I took up to Springfield were some sheets of phony food stamps that the United States Army produced when I was in the hostility period. It was called psychological warfare. And with the things we did in psychological warfare was to gum things up behind the lines in Germany. And these are food stamps that were not true food stamps, but we scattered them by airplane over Germany. And the German people would pick them up and then try to get food with them. And of course, that was too many people for the food that was available. And here I'll give you what one or two of the stamps called. This red one here is called, says Brot, B-R-O-D, B-R-O-T. What would that be? Bread. Bread. Very good. This next one is Kasa, K-A-S-C. What would that be? Cheese. Cheese. And then there's one, this one, Fleisch. Meat. My golly, some of your German very well. Anyhow, I brought 4 or 5 sets of these, and if there are any of you who'd like to take it home, I'd like to give it to you. So thank you very much.
There's a wealth of talent in this room today, okay? The next person that I think they want to give some sort of a report on the museum, when we talk about volunteers, people that are day in, day out doing things, and And you can never forget about this person, Floyd Soprano. Do you have something to say?
Before I give you my report, I would ask you all to remember our dearly departed member, Elsie West. Would you please bow your heads in a moment of silence? Thank you. Elsie was a very good member. She remembered us in her will with $1,000. I want to tell you that the museum cannot operate on your $5 a year dues. That doesn't even pay for the paper and the paperclip. But people like Elsie and benefactors who are living today who remember the museum, and that's how we can progress. And so we want to remember Elsie in our prayers. And now for the museum. The museum will be open for your inspection after the meeting. And you will find the museum is in a state of transition. You will see empty cases that need to be washed and replaced with items and situated in their proper place in the museum. So forgive us for that. It's going to take about 3 or 4 weeks to put our house back in order. But I do want you to know that the new cases in memory of Dorothy Dillard have arrived and are in the proper place in the museum and are filled with the proper items. And especially notice how beautiful the toy cases are. We're so grateful to Irving and his family for remembering us. Also, as you go in on the right, you will see the only complete collection of blue cowbells. Even the Blue family does not have a complete collection of the blue cowbells. The blue cowbells are so fine that the top symphony orchestras in the world vie to buy a blue cowbell. That's another historical point for Colinsville. This collection belongs to the Fetter family. It is on loan, but we have our foot in the door for negotiation. So do examine it and enjoy it. It's apple butter time, and it's apple butter time in the museum. As you walk in, the center display features a large brass apple butter container, pot and kettle, and also the wooden stirring rack. And this was given to us a couple months ago by the Savage family in memory of the Stewarts. The Stewarts were quite old and owned this kettle, and they lent it to various churches throughout the area for years to cook their apple butter. So it's a very historic kettle, very beautiful, very valuable, and I hope you enjoy it. It does put you in the mood for fall. Now, I also call your attention to the paper on your table about sign here if you are a charter member of the Friends of the Museum. I want you to try to put the word out for everybody to come to the November meeting, which is Founders Night. And we want to make that a nice affair, and we'll honor all our charter members. And the records back in the beginning were a little slipshod, and the only thing we have is the mimeograph paper that you see on the table. I heard you mimeographed that because a lot of people didn't remember whether they were charter members or not. So I talked to Lou Stamen, who was the first president, and she said they would consider the first 3 months as being charter members. Now, the paper on your desk with mimeograph, the 2 copies, is dated August 1975. 76, but in 1976 is when our country was 200 years old, and that's why the museum was founded. I don't want to cheat us out of the year, but that's the only record that we have. And if you know of anyone, please write your name down so we can contact them. So this will be a nice affair, and you'll enjoy it. And please plan on coming, and please visit the museum. Thank you.
Yes, Lou.
In fact, when she died, they requested donations the museum. So I think we should acknowledge her.
Absolutely.
Sorry that I didn't remember about Margaret. What triggered my mind was $1,000. You know where my mind is. Was the museum. But Margaret has done so much. She did all the drawings for our note paper, and she worked on the cover for the history book. And I'm going to ask her again to bow your head for a big moment. Let's all remember people like Margaret and Elsie, and then hope that they're in the bosom of the Lord.
Thank you. Okay, do we have any old business? Any old? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to put it up before the organization about raising the lunch or the dinner price. I know how hard it is because I called, you have no idea how many places I called today. And there are very few that will give it to you for $5. There are very few that will do it for $5. And if it's $5.25, they will not give you a dessert. And I talked to help out into that cake. But I just wanted you all to know that I think we really ought to go up. If you want me to put in a form of a motion or so you can discuss it, I move that we raise our dinner and lunch price to $6.
Got a second? Let's do Ina? Did you have something, Ina? Okay. Let's put it up to a vote. A yes or a no. Discuss it? We got a second. Let's talk about it. Talk. Talk to me. Talk to us. Mm-hmm.
I don't mind paying $6, but
Everything goes up at the paycheck. Yes, ma'am.
We only meet 6 times a year. I don't think that should hurt any of us. $6 is
Right.
Spend $5 for 5 years.
It's hard to go find a meal for $5, you know. What if we would start meeting once a month? But that'd be okay, too.
if there's any leftover.
We have it once a month, is there a seat of people volunteers to be hosted?
Why do you think I'm standing up here saying volunteer, volunteer, volunteer?
I need more volunteers.
Right. So, got a motion on the floor?
Right.
Are we, are we going to vote? Want to vote? Okay. All in favor of raising the price of the dinner to $6? Raise your hands. And do we have any no's? Very good. It passes. I suspect Mrs. Sager probably also included. That's how she got the cake. But it's true. You know, I mean, we do only meet 6 times a year, and we're here to have fun and socialize and try to bring more people into our group and that type of thing. Okay. Any other old business? Okay. Let's move. Yes, ma'am. Hold on. Excuse me, we can't hear you. Excuse me. Go ahead.
Black Saturday or Sundays, there's throwaway paper, Naomi Robinson and Black Lady, pictures on there. She is a charter member of our group, and her sister Angel was. And that is, Naomi will be 100 Friday. So I think it'd be nice, she's over at Colinsville Care Center, and I think it'd be real nice if all of you could send her a birthday card. Now, most of the time, her mind is real alert,
And we read the article in there for families getting her party Saturday out at the American Legion. And I got an invitation, and I thought I meant to bring it, and I forgot to bring it. But it's an invitation. When you opened it up, it was a birth announcement. And has her mother and dad's name and all of that for 1895. Then you open it up on the inside, and it's an invitation to her, 100th birthday party. So I thought that was kind of a clever idea. But she always asked me about our meetings. She still remembers a lot of people I know. All of you enjoyed coming. Well, I just think it'd be a nice gesture, and if you send her one, put on there, bring it to the museum so she can identify it.
She would know by when you would write friends of the museum. She would know. Right. Very good. Very good. I happened to not get my paper on Sunday morning, and I happen to call that newspaper up all the time. But I don't know. Let's go back to something else here for just a second. Hello. Let's go back to one item just for a second. A lot of people don't toot their own horn, and sometimes I guess that's a good idea. So I like to toot their horn for him. Floyd Soprino. Think about Floyd Soprino. Floyd Soprino, I don't know how many years he was down the street here at Floyd's Flowers. This man has a gift. This man has a gift to put things together, to organize things. Floral. When you go into that museum, you see a lot of that, where he is putting things together, organizing, putting things together. And he's one of our curators, and a lot of times our volunteers kind of forget when they go in there who did all that stuff, But he's one of the people that does it on a regular basis, and this man has a God-given talent, so we should never forget that, okay? Now let's go to new business.
Can I get old business?
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay.
I've got my tablet. And I want volunteers for March, which is a night meeting, or November, which is a night meeting. Please sign up for me. Then we'll have our meetings all taken care of for 96. You won't hear from me again. This is fine. Thank you.
And if you don't, she'll be back.
I'll be back.
Okay, any other old business? Any other old business? Yes, ma'am. Back to Mrs. Robinson. Hold on a minute.
She was born in Colinsville. I was real surprised. She was born right here in Colinsville. I read her history.
Mhm.
It was real touching.
They were born in. That house there on Summit is the house they were born in.
And she is an educated woman.
John,
Yes.
in addition to everybody trying to send a card to Mr. Robinson, I think it'd be nice if we could find somebody to volunteer to walk along with the Italian Fest parade carrying a happy birthday sign for him.
Mhm. Right. Okay. Right. Well, we'll be in the parade, and I'm involved with the Italian Fest and all that stuff, and maybe we could get a sign. If not, we'll put something up on the van or something, you know what I mean? This is what we need in our town. This is what Main Street program, this is what the downtown manager, that's what all of this stuff is. And here, when you think about these people over here opening up their, Sheila and Dan having their tea room over there, this is the type of thing we want to bring to Main Street. So people will come to our town. They're coming now. They drive, when you leave St. Louis, and you go anywhere, you have to come through our town. We're trying to get them to come and see the Ketchup Bottle and Cahokia Mounds and come downtown and all those other things. That's what this is all about. And it goes back to, I feel that this group here will have a key role played in what happens in downtown. Okay? Goes back to that. Any other old business? Yes?
What we talk about Naomi, when you go in and look at the new doll cave, the doll that's standing up is the slave doll that Naomi and her sister gave to the museum. And it's very, very old, from the Gold Slipper War. So I hope you all notice that. That's one of the many items that they gave to the
Thank you all. Please,
Oh, but she thinks that the downtown merchants should put a card in the window, happy birthday, Naomi.
Right.
Good idea.
That's right. But see, this is what the coordinator, this woman's got her hands full. Judy, do you know what you really got involved in? But what we needed for downtown was someone who could take care of all this stuff for us. We've tried to do it and run our business, and you just can't get all these things. It's just not fine-tuned. So this person will fine-tune it, and she'll more or less be the coordinator and try to put all these groups together and all these different functions together. This will be her job, and she will need help. And she's not bashful. She will come and ask for your help. Okay, and she'll call you many, many times until you do. And it is going to be fun. People will do things. They will give of their time if it's fun. If they ever realize, like the people who are involved in Italian Fest, if those people ever don't ever tell them that that's work, because the thing would be all over. You know. Okay, any other old business? Okay, let's move on to new business. There was a nominating committee formed to bring on a new president and to bring on a new secretary. The names that were brought were Dolores Kirby for secretary and Dan Hayden for president. So we need to put this out onto the floor. We need to get a vote, a yes or a no, because these people will be seated at the next meeting, for the Founders' Evening. So let's do the secretary first. Dolores Kirby, first secretary of this group.
Who seconded it?
No, there was already a nominating committee that did that. Is Dolores Kirby? Here's another person again, Colinsville Herb Society. Okay? She's out there sweating and trying to clean the place up the last... Okay, we got her now for a little while. And we need a second on that. Did we get a second?
Oh, Mary Monroe? Okay.
Okay, now do we do a vote? Is that what we do? All in favor of Dolores Kirby for Secretary of Friends of the Museum, please raise your hand. You can vote for yourself. Good. Any noes? Very good, welcome. Now let's move on to Dan Hayden as president of our group, Friends group. Do I have a motion?
I move that we nominate Dan Hayden, elect Dan Hayden, their son to the Colinsville Friends.
Very good. Can we have a second, Mr. Paul? Let's put it out for a vote. All in favor of Dan Hayden as our next president, please raise your hand. You could vote too, Dan. You can raise your hand if you want to. Very good. Do we have any no's? Very good. So these people will be seated at the Founders' Evening. The Founders' Evening will be November the 13th at 7 o'clock. I would suggest that whoever is going to be signing up for, calling around to find out how many people are going to come for this dinner, I'd suggest don't wait for them to call you. I'd be calling them because I think this place is going to be very crowded. Okay? This should go for a very interesting evening. I was told, I think there are 16, is that right, Floyd? There are 16 originals still alive? Right. Now, I don't know how many of them we're going to get here, but it's something to think about, but I think we will have a packed house. Again, let me tell you a couple more things. We'll close this up real quick. The Italian Fest. Come to the Italian Fest. Okay? Even if you don't eat Italian food. Come and see your neighbors. That's why you come here. You come here to socialize and make friends with people. Come both days. Come all day both days. If you get tired. I get. All right. Don't forget the Heritage Days at the end of the month down at the Cahokia Mounds. We have an $8 million facility down there. In the summertime, we have 40,000 people that go through the front door every month. So it's a very important thing. So be sure and set one of those 3 days, go down there, and you might even see that Indian fly off of that horse. And, yes, Judy.
I always have to say one last thing about the ketchup bottle. We closed the store at the warehouse last Saturday. It was kind of hard to do, but we shut the door at 12 o'clock, and the remainder of the shirts are available at Ashman Pharmacy. And I do have to put in a plug. Anybody that has grandchildren or children, anybody that's about age 10, about 5 to age 10, we have a surplus of about 30 shirts that we need to get rid of, sweatshirts and t-shirts. In those sizes, they're adult, small, and children 14, 16, and 8, 10 sizes. But Ashman's will be the last place to get them. The Amico store, Amico service station also has a few. But that's the end of the project. We also are rejoicing because we have $10,000, well, we're $400 short of $10,000 to go into the maintenance fund. The group elected not to install the 2 poles that would hold the lights because theirs came in over $10,000. We think that's very excessive. So that's all on poles. The poles went back to the company. The lights are paid for by Mary Eckert. The light is on the roof of the building, and that'll do. And so we're happy to have at least one light on it. And the $10,000 will stay in a fund to repaint the bottle later.
Very good. And that was all done through volunteering and standing out there. And when this thing was first proposed for the ketchup bottle, it just, a lot of people thought that this woman stepped down off of a spaceship. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
I can tell you just how all this came about. I was president of Women's Club, and Lou Stevens and Mary Monroe, my good friends, were public and civic affairs chairman. And they went out looking for a project for my 2 years. And they went to the chamber. They wanted a kiosk, wasn't it? For all the people living and much stuff there. So then they went down there, and that's when they found out that we could do the ketchup bottle. And so the Women's Club endorsed it, and then, as luck would have it, Judy DeMarge arrived. In office. The ketchup bottle committee was formed, and then how it all happened. Janet is on the committee. Well, Linda, Mary, myself, Sue Wrigley, Doris Bauer, April Brain, Wade McCormick, and Will, he's been terrific. And Arlo and Betty Wrigley. And my dining room table, I really hate to see it over with because it'll never be the same again. Once a month, we were always there. But that is actually how I got started. Lou and Mary brought us to Women's Club. And then, if we hadn't gotten there, I guess maybe we'd still be sitting along. She knew how to do it. And I think we really pulled work because this was right at the beginning. That they would max anything up to $10,000. And I really think they thought, this is a bunch of old ladies that are going to go tired. They had to pay their $10,000.
Very good. But you got to keep in mind, too, that the people that she mentioned are the same people that are involved in all these other things. It's the same people. You know, they had a lot of training before Judy DeMoise came along, okay? And they'll be called on in the future, and a lot of you other people will be called on in the future. Judy DeMoise is not the person that's going to do this. It's going to be, if this is all going to work for our Main Street program, it's going to be everybody working together. She is the person that's going to attempt to put all the glue together to get all these groups together instead of sometimes we have some friction between groups. She is the person who will try to coordinate all of this. It'll be us all together doing this. It's a group effort. Last but not least, my wife also told me, too, she says, if you don't really want to get there and talk too long because, after a while they'll maybe throwing those knives and forks at you. Okay, so I'm almost done. Floyd Soprano stood here a few minutes ago and told you about what's happening in the museum. The least that we can do is go into the museum and see what they have done. And then after you leave the museum, go home and pick up the telephone and call everybody you know and tell them about it, so that they'll show up, so that we can get more membership and get maybe one day, wouldn't it be neat if we had to meet down at the Colinsville High School in the auditorium? We had so many people. And God forbid we had to raise the lunch to $6.50. Thank you very much. Hold on just a second.
One of the charter members, the Lois family, and her husband celebrated their 50th wedding anniversary.
Very good. Very good. That's history in the making when you go that far, really. So I guess we call for an adjournment? Is that what we do? Very good. Thank you.